Alright, little chillblains. Now what we're doing is we're moving on to a new area of decimals. So we're still on decimals, but we're looking at something completely new, which is rounding to the nearest whole number. Now, the thing to remember here is that a decimal is like a fraction, it's part of the whole. So when we're rounding to the nearest whole, we're rounding up so that there's no longer a decimal point. Now, you can think about that very much as pounds and pence. So if you had 3.75, rounding it to the nearest pound would be £4. Okay, so that's a good thing to keep in mind, rounding to the nearest pound. Okay, so if you look in the wee blackboard, it says be able to round to the nearest whole number. So here we've got 6.38 lies between 6 and 7. And it is closer to the 6. So the nearest whole number is 6. Now, if something that can be confusing is the fact that it ends in an 8, and you would round up the 8. But actually, if we're rounding up the 8, that would just make it 6.40. And that's not the whole number. And 4 is a number that we would still round down. So the answer is 6. Okay, now 40.71 lies between 40 and 41. And we're rounding it to the nearest whole number. 40.71 would be 41. Don't get confused and think that that would be 50. That is a common problem. So try and think of this in terms of money and rounding it to the nearest pound. When you look at the nearest whole number, when rounding to the nearest whole number, look at the first digit which comes after the decimal point. So the fact of the matter is you can ignore the second decimal point. So for example, in 6.38, you don't even have to look at the 8, just look at the 3. And in 40.71, you don't have to look at the 1, just look at the 7. And that is enough information. So, if it is a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we round up. And if it is a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, we leave the number as it is. So 5.4 rounded to the nearest whole number is 5. 2.8 rounded to the nearest whole number is 3. 6.5 equals 7 to the nearest whole number, and now this is exactly the kind of thing that confuses you. 8.399999. You can ignore all those 9s. You only have to look at the 3, and the 3 tells you to round down, which gives you 8. And I'm telling you this because there will be examples that are there just to confuse you. Okay? That will be their sole purpose, to make sure you're on your toes. Right, so here's exercise 3. And what you're doing here is you're just choosing between one of the two numbers in the brackets. So for example, 6.2, will you make it a 6 or will you make it a 7? And it is of course a 6. Because we're rounding down the 2. And then if you look right at the last one to their JI, 200.28. Remember, we're not looking at the 8, we're only looking at the 2. So will that be 200 or will that be 201? Number 2, you've got a bit more writing to do, but it's basically the same exercise. 1.8 lies between 1 and 2. It is closer to 2. And then the last one, 69.82 lies between 69 and something, and it is closer to, okay. So those two are quite straightforward. 3 and 4, this is actually using pounds, rounding to the nearest pound, okay, which is definitely the easiest way to think about it. I and J are there. I, J and K definitely there to confuse you, so just think carefully. But you don't have to look beyond the first decimal place. You don't have to. So in 620, you don't have to look at the 0. In G, we've got 1949, £9.49. You don't have to look at the 9. You just have to look at the 4. Okay, and number 4 is exactly the same, but instead of it being pounds, it's centimetres and millimetres. Okay, so 3 and 4 are the same, but in number 3 you're going to put a pound sign, and in number 4 you're going to put a centimetres at the end. Remember that your decimal point doesn't need a box to itself, and please leave an empty box between your answers so that it's really easy to read. Okay, I hope that you get on fine. Let me know if you've got any questions.